the Impostor Syndrome Files. I am so grateful that you're here, and I really hope that you've been enjoying the conversations that you've been listening to, and hopefully finding some tips, some next steps that you can take if you struggle with similar feelings of self-doubt, which obviously, as you're hearing, are fairly universal. This is something that we all go through from time to time. When I started this podcast, my goal was really to try to normalize the experience, to let everybody know that you are not alone, that there's a name for what you're feeling, and that there are steps that we can be taking to manage it more effectively. What I have found over the course of these conversations has been fascinating. I have had an absolutely powerful and different conversation with every single person who I have interviewed. I worried at one point that there may not be enough to talk about. How much is there to say about imposter syndrome? Are the stories going to start to get repetitive? That has absolutely not been the case. Everyone brings a fascinating new perspective to this conversation. I have learned something from every discussion that we've had. I hope you have too. I want to make a note that many of these recordings are being done during the social distancing that's happening with coronavirus. I am doing my best to protect the sound quality, but we are all in homes that have pets, kids, all kinds of background noise going on. For me, it's much more important to share with you a very natural conversation between two people than it is to share a perfectly polished recording. So I hope that you will bear with us if there are moments where the sound is not perfect. Really, my goal is to share stories, not to provide perfectly scripted, perfectly polished audio. So apologies for any imperfections that may be coming through in the recordings, but I'm hoping that you're getting the essence of the message regardless. So thank you again for being here. I wish you all the best and hope that you will consider sharing your own story one day. Thanks again. Welcome, Elona. It's great to have you here today. I would love to start by just having you introduce us to yourself. Share whatever you're comfortable sharing with us.
Sure. Thank you so much, Kim, for having me on your podcast. My name is Elona Lopari, and I am a career coach, and I help women professionals find work, get promoted, or start their own businesses. Prior to being a career coach, I was in a corporate environment for over 13 years in executive leadership positions, human resources, and a few other roles as well before I made the leap to start my own business.
Wonderful. So I'd love to just ask you an initial question around imposter syndrome. And that is, what does imposter syndrome mean to you? How, if at all, has it shown up in your life, in your career?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was in leadership positions at corporate, I was feeling a lot of I guess now that I know what imposter syndrome is a little bit more, a lot of feelings of anxiety, as if I didn't know what I was doing, a lot of self-doubt, because a lot of the time I was surrounded by higher level executives around me, and they were mostly male dominated. So I had an issue with, as far as executives, when I would attend meetings or when I would conduct my own meetings, I would feel mortified as if I did not know the information, or my biggest anxiety was from feeling like I was going to be asked a question and I might not have known the answer, and I might have sort of looked like I was a fluke, or why was I there? So it started in my corporate career. And at that time, I did not know what it was called. And that's actually when I started my own business, as I was going out on my own and sort of unraveling a lot of the knowledge that I had from corporate to apply that to my own clients. It started showing up again. But I believe because I sort of went through a self-development journey, before I left corporate into my own business. And that's one of the major reasons why I took the leap. And now I'm better able to understand the symptoms of it, and sort of like feeling this drag and this feeling of I don't fit in, or I'm not good enough, or, I'm going to be found out. I don't know my stuff. Even though logically I know that I have a lot of background, a lot of knowledge. So it started showing up when I took a leap on my business at the beginning stages as well. But I believe that I was able to identify it at that point, and I was able to still take the actions that I need to take and sort of just quiet it down and still, so it wouldn't, and still do what I needed to do. So it wouldn't let me, I wouldn't let it stop me from what I needed to do at that point in time. Yeah.
So that's one of the common themes that I hear from people that I find fascinating. And I can certainly relate to this myself, is that there is such a powerful effect when you're going through that imposter syndrome and all of the feelings that you're describing of, oh no, I'm not good enough, I'm going to be found out, right? But we still keep going. And I'm curious, even going back to what you were describing as the male-dominated workplace where you were interacting with leadership, how did you get through it? You had those feelings, but you persevered nonetheless, right? So what was going on then? How did you manage it?
Yeah, I think it's just like a part of me that sort of I like challenging myself. So every time that I have these kind of fear-dominated thinking, I sort of just push myself through it. So I think I just sort of cope with it on my own and still showed up and still did what I could do. And it kind of lessened the more I sort of started giving myself evidence for that I knew what I was doing. And I was actually very successful in my corporate career. So I think the more results I got, the more it started, I sort of used that evidence to show myself that, listen, you're not a fraud, you belong here. You know what you're doing. You're doing great, amazing things with your career. I had a lot of great engagement with my team. So, I sort of focused on the good. I sort of focused on the result I was producing rather than the fear. I think that's absolutely how I got through this and my corporate career.
I love how you use the word evidence. I think that's a really powerful way of characterizing it. What did that evidence look like? What were there specific practices that you engaged in? What did you do to be able to then come back to yourself in those moments of self-doubt and say, actually, here's the truth, right? Here's the facts.
So I think, as I mentioned before, as I was getting the results, I was going into meetings or conversations, and I was feeling all these doubts and the symptoms, I guess, of this imposter syndrome, as I know it now, which I did not know it then. But then once I was getting the results and I was getting through it, it was kind of like a confidence booster. That, see, I don't have to listen to that voices telling me that, because I do have the results and the meetings went well, and I would get the results that I was going in for. So I just used all of that to just get through it. I think, I later on I discovered about meditation and sort of a yoga and like these sort of spiritual practices, which absolutely helped me with that now. Because as I get quiet and I kind of understand my feelings or where they're coming from, or even journaling, I did not have these, unfortunately, when I was in my corporate career, but I did develop these before I took the leap to start my own business. So now these are some of the most dominant practices that I use to kind of help me cope with it. Is absolutely the journaling and the meditation and sort of like exploring my feelings, or where the anxiety is coming from, or what thoughts are causing it. And once I know what it is, then I have a better idea or better choices to start changing that and sort of focus again on the evidence that I create for myself. And that sort of helps me get through it.
I think when you said know what it is, that's really important to this process too. And it may seem counterintuitive because when we're anxious, we don't necessarily want to dig more deeply into those feelings and into those thoughts because there's a fear that we might get stuck there, right? So I think the tendency when we're feeling anxious is to try to distract ourselves. At least that has been my tendency for a lot of my life. And I think you're absolutely right to point to the benefit of actually sitting with those feelings, trying to understand them a little bit more, because that's what allows you to then challenge them, right? With the evidence as you described it, right? With more productive ways of looking at things.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest change has been that I know that it exists, and I do get like that once in a while, especially like I said, in new circumstances or in new situations that I'm constantly putting myself in, and I'm challenging myself. By the way, I was always praised as a child for high achievement. So sort of being a high achiever is definitely something that I had to still struggle with these days, to kind of, quiet that out and kind of just, be good enough with what it is. But I believe once I am aware of what's happening with me, I definitely have I don't get scared from it or run away or distract now. I sort of just know what it is and know how to cope myself through it. And I just I just sort of get through it like that. But I believe the biggest change has definitely been me being aware that it exists, and there's something that I deal with, and just having those healthy coping mechanisms helps me sort of get through it when it does show up. And I see it showing up in a lot. It's not like it goes away. It's always there.
Mm-hmm.
And then every new level that I'm putting myself into with my business right now, it's always there, creeping in there. But I feel confident now because I feel like I know what it is. It's not something that's creeping in, and I'm sort of like dealing with it. So it's just, I've sort of learned to live with it and to make it my friend, and just to cope through it either way. So I can do what I need to do and focus on the mission that I am out there to serve. So, yeah.
I think you said so many great things just in that recent statement, right? You're not the only one to characterize it as a friend, as strange as that may sound to people listening. I think recognizing it for what it is, and like you said, it's not something that's likely to ever go away entirely. It's something that will accompany us through challenges, through change, through times when we're leveling up, right? But knowing what it is allows us to intervene more quickly with those practices like you described, right? Having those tools in the toolbox allows us to get through it much more productively.
Yeah, absolutely. And now I sort of see it as a measuring stick. I see it that every time I need to grow, I will feel it. So it's sort of like, okay, I'm in the right track. So I just learned to utilize it in my benefit, and get through it anyway. Because if it's going to be here anyway, it's sort of one of those things that rather than fight and resist it, I'll just embrace it, and I'll just cope with it and just get to the other side. And the more I do it, the more I realize that it's absolutely under my control, and I just keep pushing through. But yeah, I do use it as a measuring stick nowadays. I'm like, okay, I'm in the right track. I'm growing again.
I love that. I've advised that as well, because I do think that if we get too comfortable, we're not going to experience imposter syndrome, right? You're not going to feel like an imposter if you have mastered whatever it is that you're doing. And so that sensation, those feelings are a good indication that we're continuing to grow and push ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that's absolutely what I learned. And in a way, it's an indicator to kind of, when I do fall in my comfort, just sort of step out of it and kind of do the next thing, because you get addicted to the growth. Like I absolutely am addicted to the improvement and the growth and the challenge, and sort of change and transform along the way, and just be different from the person I was yesterday. So the more you do it, the more to sort of you tend to enjoy the process. I mean, I do enjoy the process. Like I said, when I do get comfortable, it's just like one of those things. Okay, I'm here now. What's the next level? So I sort of always put myself in that next thing, because I know I'll just get more resilient and stronger along the way. And especially that I have this under my tool belt. I say now, it's part of my resilience, and that's just how I see it. So it's no longer holding me back, but it definitely, I came a long way to understand it and to experience it, and finally even have a name and understand like what exactly was happening with me, rather than at the beginning I was sort of like hiding away or staying quiet because I didn't want to feel these feelings. But once I figured it out, like I said, it's just one of those things that you have to manage. I feel like it's the feelings you have to manage, and with the proper tools, it's absolutely doable.
So, do you mind if I ask you where you grew up?
I am, yes, I am Albanian.
Oh, okay.
I came here when I was 15.
Okay.
So I've been here about 21 years. Yeah.
I am partly Albanian myself, so that's great to hear.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, on my dad's side, I'm Italian and Albanian, so that maybe we're related somehow.
Look at that.
Oh no. But the reason I ask is because one of the fascinating things about imposter syndrome is that it's universal, regardless of where you grew up, race, any cultural background. It just seems to be everywhere. And I wondered if there was anything that you could point to in your own experience, having come to the U.S. from another country, especially as a teenager, that you think may have influenced your own experience. You mentioned being a high achiever. Is there anything that you think may have been, that may have triggered in you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think just through a lot of reflecting back to when I came here, I saw my parents. Obviously, coming to a new country is not easy, and I saw my parents, even though I was a teenager, struggling to get jobs, and they didn't speak the language, and it was a different culture. So I had to work really early to sort of become that person in the home that contributed to the family finances. So I sort of grew up very quickly when I came here, and I was one of the oldest from my two siblings. So I just felt like, I needed to, like, in that role of an older person right away. And I sort of skipped a lot of the teenagers, I believe, because I started early in the effort to help out my own family. Because as I mentioned before, my parents were struggling. They didn't know anybody. They had to get very low paying jobs. A lot of times they didn't find work. So I believe seeing my parents struggle, somehow I think I developed this belief that I will never see myself struggle. So I will always make sure that I achieve or be successful, because I came here, and there's so many opportunities in this country where we came from, there's limited opportunities. That's the reason why obviously my parents migrated here. And I think somehow within myself, I made a promise that I always, wanted to make sure that everyone around me is always going to be safe and comfortable. And that meant achieving and being financially secure, or always growing into my career, or doing the next thing and the next thing. So I think that's absolutely where this strengthened a lot more when I came here and I saw that experience.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I do think that, it's generally the case that high achievers struggle with imposter syndrome more than others, but especially when you have that pressure to want to support your family, to want to make sure that you have a different experience for yourself going forward. elevates the pressure to another level, which in some cases is kind of a double-edged sword, right? On the one hand, it can come with a lot of anxiety. On the other hand, it gives you that push and motivation to keep challenging yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have struggled obviously with anxiety and all that, especially as I mentioned when I was in my corporate career. But I think I have that drive that it definitely leaves me with. So I think that drive even happens now. It's just not something that I sort of was able to achieve comfortability and financial independence, but I still go for more because at this point it's more about realizing my fullest potentials. But yeah, during the journey, absolutely, I felt a lot of pressure. As I said, there was a lot of, things that I had to do while I wasn't even grown up yet. I had to kind of pick up that role and then do what I needed to do to help my family. So, yeah.
Now, you're a coach, so you're working with a lot of people who are in transition themselves. Does this show up a lot with the people that you work with?
Yes, absolutely. So the majority of my clients that I mostly work with is women from corporate that are starting their own businesses. So this absolutely shows up with them as well. But I believe because I went through the journey myself, I am able to coach them through that and sort of like identify and understand them a lot better. So they can move on to cope with that as well. But yeah, it absolutely shows up with my clients as well.
Hear your coworker in the background.
It is my dog.
We've all got some new coworkers these days as we work from home.
Oh, I see. Yes, exactly. Yes. He's saying hi.
We wouldn't want to leave him out of the conversation. Yeah, I know about you, but I have certainly found that coaching others and having gone through my own journey, it's always a journey. I don't know if I'll ever reach a final destination. I feel like I have been better able to support others through imposter syndrome and at the same time continue to grow myself. I feel so much stronger and more confident now doing the work I do than I ever did when I was back in my corporate career.
Yeah, because I believe that when you go through it and you know what it is and you're sort of seeing it in other people as well, you just kind of make peace with it and you just like, it is what it is and we know what it is. So when you help people through it, you're kind of sort of helping yourself through it as well. And whatever level it starts showing up again. So yeah, I have that similar experience as well.
So what motivated you to want to tell your story today?
So I saw your webinar, and as you were talking about imposter syndrome, I thought it was really amazing as far as like the way that you described all the symptoms. And since I am dealing with that as well through my journey in my business, I just felt like I needed to sort of share my story as well to help other women that maybe want to start their own businesses, or if they want to move their careers further in whatever industry they're going or they're in. So I just feel like, again, just through my own experience, I was hoping to help other people with it as well. So that was my biggest motivator to reach out to want to share this.
Well, I'm really grateful that you did. I've really enjoyed talking with you today, and I think you gave us some really great tips on how to manage this, how to start just by knowing what it is, and then using some really practical steps to manage it more effectively. So I'm really grateful that you were willing to have this conversation with me today.
Well, I want to thank you, Kim, for having me on. And like I said, I if I'm able to help and have your listeners listening and kind of identify with it, and just let everyone know that it is something to manage, and hopefully that will help out and give them better coping skills to deal with this as well. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for listening today. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and share it with other women who can benefit from this conversation. Before we go, I want to share some additional resources with you. If you struggle with imposter syndrome and you want to manage it more effectively, I invite you to join my free Impostor Syndrome online challenge. Every day for 7 days, you'll get an email with self-reflection questions and exercises to help you better understand your own experience with imposter syndrome and how to navigate it more effectively. To join the free challenge, visit executivekareersuccess.com/imposter-syndrome-challenge. When you sign up, you'll immediately receive your first message. Also, if you're interested in joining a community of women who engage in candid conversations that generally aren't happening elsewhere, I invite you to join my Leading Women discussion group. On the first and third Thursday of every month at 12 p.m. Eastern, we meet virtually over Zoom to talk about questions or challenges related to career management, leadership development, and any other relevant topics such as imposter syndrome and confidence. It's always a great discussion with a great group of women. If you want to check it out, you're welcome to be my guest on a future call. Just reach out to me at kim@executivekareersuccess.com and I will share the call details with you. And if you want to join my newsletter to receive tips, insights, and updates, text Leading Women, all one word, to 66866. Finally, consider telling us your story. Contact me to learn more about how you can be a guest on the Impostor Syndrome Files. Thanks again and have a wonderful day.